Continuing with the testimony of Robert Maclean. For almost 5 months, the TSA took no action against me. It did not place me on restrictive duties, suspend my top secret security clearance, place me on administrative leave, nor did it revoke my access to an internet portal with numerous air marshal schedules and seating arrangements for 9 months. But then it officially labeled the unmarked text message as sensitive security information after the fact and on April 11, 2006. It fixed me with breaching national security, or fired me for breaching national security due to unauthorized disclosure of sensitive security information. I've now spent over 8 years in legal battles seeking to end the punishment for correcting the agency's mistake, the only way that was left, warning Congress and the public. I've paid a high price for doing my duty. Not so much in terms of legal fees, because so many have come to my support, from FLEOA to the Government Accountability Project to former Acting Solicitor General Neil Cattell, but in terms of everything else, it has been a disaster to commit the truth. So why did I do it? I blew the whistle because I had to. I could not live with the tragedy risk if I had been the cynical, silent observer. When we think about why our movement matters, put yourself in my place and ask yourself, what if I had remained silent? I believe that I made a difference by blowing the whistle to defend our country. It would be an honor to work with your committee to make a difference to that whistleblower, so that whistleblowers can defend themselves. Robert Maclean was born in a U.S. Air Force hospital in Torrejón Air Base in Spain. His father was a U.S. Air Force commissioned officer, and his mother, a citizen of Spain, was a civil clerk for the U.S. Air Force. His entire upbringing involved his parents' and step-parents' military service in the military and a federal civil service in the continental U.S. and overseas. Right after she naturalized to a U.S. citizen, Robert's mother enlisted in the U.S. Navy Reserve and spent the rest of her career in federal civil service. Excuse me. After graduating from his overseas military base high school as president of the student council, Robert scored very high on his military entrance exam and enlisted in the Air Force's Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Corps, where he had to maintain a top secret clearance and personnel reliability program certification in order to access nuclear systems. After his 4-year enlistment, he chose to enter the active Air Force Reserve. He was honorably discharged for both terms with the option to re-enlist. He is a recipient of the Air Force Training Honor Graduate Uniform Ribbon and Good Conduct Medal. In 1996, Robert became a federal law enforcement patrol agent with the Border Patrol and stationed near the U.S.-Mexico border in San Diego County. After 5.5 years of unblemished service, serving both as a national recruiter and instructor training new patrol agents, he was chosen to be the first class of 25 Department of Transportation Federal Aviation Administration Civil Aviation Security Specialists to graduate after the September 11, 2001 attacks. His position would later be reclassified as the Department of Homeland Security / Transportation Security Administration, TSA, Federal Air Marshal. Only after 1 year, Robert was given an accelerated promotion to the highest level for a non-supervisory federal air marshal. He was given a cash award for disrupting multiple illegal alien smuggling operations aboard U.S. flagged aircraft. He also exposed a foreign law enforcement agent who approached him about smuggling firearms from the U.S. to another country. The official who ordered Robert's removal would later testify that Maclean's service in the TSA was exemplary. Robert co-founded the first TSA Federal Air Marshal Service Agency chapter with the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association, FLEOA. FLEOA is not a union, but a professional organization of 25,000 managerial and field-level federal police officers and special agents who wish to form one voice before members of Congress and agency's senior executives. Robert served as the agency executive vice president from 2003 until the TSA removed him in 2006 for the single charge of unauthorized disclosure of sensitive security information. An unclassified secrecy marking any TSA employee can apply. He is currently defending two unanimous favorable U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit decisions before the U.S. Supreme Court, docket number 13-894. Robert is now a commission-only door-to-door salesperson for residential solar systems in Southern California. He is married with 3 children. Thank you.
I want to thank Carol for the kind words of introduction. I first got involved in the Robert Maclean case when I was asked by Joseph Carson to prepare an amicus brief for him in the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit on behalf of Mr. Maclean. The Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit usually decides against whistleblowers 97% of the time, but the decision of the panel was unanimous in favor of Maclean that the Department of Homeland Security violated the law in his removal from his non-probationary federal employment. It also ruled that Mr. Maclean had made a protected disclosure and that disclosure was not sensitive security information and had been applied retroactively after his disclosure was made, just in an ex post facto manner to deny him Fifth Amendment due process under the U.S. Constitution. Now, today is the 13th anniversary of the disaster of 9/11, and 3,000 Americans died, and the Patriots such as Mr. Maclean pointed out that what are we doing when we're reducing air marshal protections? And today we face a growing threat from the Middle East and Al-Qaeda and ISIS and ISIL, and yet we still have no clear strategy for how to deal with terrorism. However, there appears to be a federal government strategy of reprisal against whistleblowers, and taking that decision and having the Obama solicitor take that decision to the Supreme Court. And with the hope that the Supreme Court would rubber stamp the Justice Department violation, continued violation of Mr. Maclean's rights in his property interest in his federal employment. Now, I'm the co-author of Quest for Freedom. My co-author, William Moore, is very concerned about corruption at all levels of government, state, federal, and local. And we point out that our founding fathers had a deep desire for rule of law and constitutional government. 40,000 gave their lives, their last full devotion, so that there would be rule of law in the United States, which is now questionable, as I've mentioned in my Supreme Court amicus brief. It's case number 13-894. And we must realize that we are at a crossroads, and we cannot give up our liberties under the pretext that this must be done by regulation, not by Congress, to give the federal government the power to keep records on 100 million Americans, and to even have the CIA investigate the U.S. Senate. And the CIA cannot do that under federal law. It cannot do a domestic investigation. And 2 U.S. senators from Colorado and New Mexico have called for the resignation of the CIA director. But today, our founding fathers would want us to fight on this issue. We want to fight for liberty and the constitutional protections, First Amendment rights of association and speech. We know that what goes around comes around, and there was oppression of Scotch-Irish in Ulster. They left to come to America. Presbyterians were treated as adversely as Catholics, but the 200,000 that came to America, first and second generation, they included Patrick Henry and George Mason, among others. John Hancock. They consisted of 27 of George Washington's generals, 30 to 50% of his troops, and 50% of the casualties. And that's 40,000 Americans, 20,000 died in battle, and 20,000 in prison camps. So the battle for and the quest for freedom continues today. And we must fight at all levels, and we must use the judicial process to bring to light what is the truth. In requesting certiorari, the Justice Department Solicitor General called the decision of the Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit dangerous. What is dangerous is the obliteration of the rule of law. What is dangerous is the decline in constitutional protections. And what is dangerous is the vehement pursuit of whistleblowers in violation of federal law. And what is dangerous is that those that are litigators that protect whistleblowers and the whistleblowers themselves are subject to increased antagonistic activity to suppress their First Amendment rights and the rights where they have an affirmative duty under the law, such as Mr. Maclean, to tell the truth and to warn the public of what needed to be fixed. So I am hopeful that an oral argument occurs this November 4th, that Mr. Maclean will prevail. And I'll open it up to further questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for your presentation and for the writing of your amicus. And I do hope that the judges of the Supreme Court will take the time to read and consider what you've written and presented there. I also want to thank all of you for coming today, and I especially want to thank Linda Lewis for taping our conference today, and I hope that each of you will take into consideration what the real purpose of this case is and how important it is to you as an individual. The case will be very important in keeping our government open. The Patriot Act has caused a lot of problems and caused our government to already be closed in a lot of ways. But this, if it's decided for DHS versus Robert, could cause our government to totally close, which in my belief will lead to downfall of our democracy. Thank you very much, and goodbye.